Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla, let's go over the market and figure out what is happening and what we can expect moving forward. So with that being said, Tesla up about 0.2% on the day, which compared to the market is a ever so slight outperformance. But for the most part, the market and Tesla have been fairly flat for the day. So let's talk about it. If you enjoyed, by the way, of course, don't forget to hit that like button as it does help a lot. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor, and my membership section on YouTube is live, $3 a month with the link down below, where I share my intraday thoughts as you hear like me pretty much say throughout the video, but I share these kind of things as they come to my head live throughout the day as the stock is moving. So if you're interested, link below in the description. Moving into it though, Tesla, again, a pretty flat day, right? So ultimately, it's, a bit of a boring day, honestly, for the most part, right? We had a bit of a bounce, right? It started off a little bit eventful, right? We had a bit of a dip, this kind of, bull pennant that we're in over here, these blue lines right here on the 65 or 1 hour chart, right? We're in this little bull pennant and we did go slightly below it, but as usual, like I say, we didn't close a candle below it. That would have been step number one. And of course, if we close below it, then obviously coming back to retest it and then most likely failing and moving back down would have been step number two. But we didn't. We went below it, we recaptured it beautifully, and we obviously maintained within. Now, keep in mind, this is technically a bullish pennant. If I zoom out, you can see like this, right? Ever since these lows over here, pretty much at almost $195, massive rally, and now we're setting up what looks to be a nice sideways consolidation, or in other words, in this case, a bullish pennant, where again, massive rally, consolidation, and then usually, not always, similar to how we had the bearish pennant, again, not always, it plays out to the upside, right? Usually you'll break out of this to the north and then we make our way up even further. And this is what I believe will take us to probably like 250, maybe give or take, maybe even slightly higher, honestly, but around the 250s, right? But again, as usual, nothing is guaranteed and you want to wait for confirmation, which is what I am personally doing right now. I'm scalping here and there as we're kind of, making our way down here. And I usually sell when we get back up to about 237, like 233 to 237 has been my scalping range usually. But with that being said, the major move, of course, will happen once we break out, right? At the moment, this is what it looks like also on the daily, by the way, same concept. We did close pretty much right under the 50-day moving average. We did go above it ever so slightly, and we came up pretty close to the 240s, which is the next major level. That's going to be, to break and start closing above. But unfortunately, we did get rejected by the almost 240 area, and then still closed below the 50-day moving average, which, isn't ideal, but still not the worst thing in the world, right? And one thing you'll notice also is the fact that the 50-day moving average, which is this orange kind of brownish reddish line, and the 21 EMA, which is this yellow line, obviously are getting closer and closer with each passing day. And at some point, one will have to give, right? One will have to give and will break above or below one of them, close, and most likely start trending in that respective direction. On top of us also, of course, playing out this bullish pennant that we are currently in. So those, in my opinion, are the main things to look at right now, right? It's a patience game. Sometimes it's like this. Sometimes stocks are boring, right? It's not every day you're making some crazy, trades and, you're going crazy about it all. And then stocks are just moving left and right. And it's just, sometimes, yeah, it's boring. Sometimes you kind of let it do its thing. This is ideally when you want to start selling options, right? So for instance, after you made this massive move, that's when I started selling options. I sold options here and I sold options here, calls, right, against my shares. And obviously, as we go sideways, it's kind of boring, but at least those sold calls are making money. In other words, technically the premium is going down. In other words, that's technically me making money because the value of the contract just keeps depleting. And I've had two instances of, several contracts I would sell, weekly contracts that have expired worthless, right? Because it just didn't get to my price target that I sold at, right? That's just kind of roughly how it works. Obviously, you have to look at specific videos to understand it further, but that's the kind of the majority, right? This is where option sellers win, but usually on massive moves like this is where option buyers win, right? TLDR. Now, moving into it. So that's the main thing I'm looking at, right? Obviously, by far, that's the most important thing. We, of course, have the Cybertruck delivery event on Thursday. I think it's at 2 p.m. actually. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was confirmed by Martin, who is the head of IR or investor relations. I think his name is Martin. Let me just quickly double check. I don't know if I can find him. I think I liked it. Hopefully I liked it on Twitter or X. Yeah, he's right here. Beautiful. Take a look at this really quickly. So in case you're not up to date or you haven't been paying attention, right? The Cybertruck delivery event starts around 1 p.m. Central, which I believe is 2 p.m. Eastern. And I believe that's 11 a.m. Pacific, if I'm not mistaken. And then in Europe, that should be around 5 or 6 p.m., something like that. About 6 p.m., I think, roughly 6, 7 p.m. For most of Europe, like Western Europe, I believe at least. Don't quote me on that again. But 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. PST. So the reason I'm bringing this up is the fact that it's on a Thursday, number one. That's, good. It's pretty soon this week. But the fact that it's happening during market hours, in my opinion, is the most interesting part. The fact that it's happening during market hours. So we're going to be watching Tesla stock literally react to it live, essentially, which will be really, really cool. So I'm very curious to see how it's going to happen and how it plays out. And the cool thing is, and the thing that kind of lines up was the fact that as we're getting tighter and tighter and tighter in this little bullish pennant, right? You can see as I kind of move my mouse over here, hopefully you can see it. My camera isn't blocking it. It's blocking it ever so slightly. No, it's not. Beautiful. The apex, if you will, of this pennant potentially can go all the way up to November 29th if we just continue zigzagging, right? So tomorrow is the 28th, the 29th, which I believe is the Wednesday. And then boom, right on the 30th, right as 30th starts, we'll kind of pick a direction. So it's actually going to be either right at the delivery event or like just a day before. So it'll be like maybe Wednesday. It can go up that long in this pennant before it really picks a direction as it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, with that being said, let's talk about, what happens if we do break out to the upside. In theory, of course, right? What happens next? Well, personally, I believe all that's going to happen is the fact that, it's not the world's biggest pennant, but I think it's enough of a pennant to bring us up essentially to retest the top of this bullish flag that we are in on the daily. Now, this is a large flag. Like this is a small pennant, and this is technically could have been a pennant if in theory, but obviously it's in the shape of a flag this time. But this is what I consider to be a fairly large flag, right? This is a pretty decently large bullish flag. Of course, if it plays out in the bullish sense, obviously that's going to be exceptionally bullish for Tesla, but we still have to wait and see. But the cool thing is if we break out of this bullish pennant, I think it'll bring us to the top of this bull flag, which will be somewhere around the vicinity of 250s, like low 250s roughly, is where this should take us and where we'll see how we react, right? That's going to be where things start getting interesting. Do we break out? If we do, fantastic. Is it a confirmed breakout? Do we just come back and retest? Cool. Then we come back up and then we have this blue line, which was of course the bottom of the exceptionally large channel that we were in. Very, very large channel. Don't forget, this was a massive channel, right? I'll quickly redraw it in case you've forgotten, but it did look something like this. Give it just a rough example, right? But this is roughly what it looked like. It was this massive channel that we were in, that we did break down from, and we haven't retested yet. Now, in theory, the way this usually works is you break down, we come back up eventually at some point, right? Because it was such a big channel, it can take time. This is roughly the amount of time you would expect, honestly. And we come up to retest it successfully, which is bearish, of course, and then we continue making our way back down. That is extremely possible. So keep that in mind, which is going to be close to the 250s, if not close to 260, right? That's going to be a very important range to pay attention to once and if, of course, we get there. Now, with that being said, even though the most expected outcome is to successfully retest and then make our way back down even further, there are instances where it just goes back into the channel. Netflix has been the best example of it. Same concept, absolutely ginormous ascending channel that Netflix was in, broke back down, came back up, retested it successfully, and then it did actually go down even further. But what happened? Earnings, massive gap up, went right back into the channel and has been on an absolute tear ever since then. I wish I bought here. I was thinking it'll go a little bit lower. I was kind of greedy, I'm not gonna lie, but it's fine, And now look at the RSI, it's exceptionally overbought. The point I'm bringing this up is the fact that there are chances, there are possibilities, there are scenarios, if you will, where you can go back into the channel like Netflix did, and that's potentially what can happen to Tesla. I don't know if it will. We'll, of course, talk about it as it happens, but it's not impossible. So that's kind of the main thing I'll be looking at. Now, on the flip side, if we break down from this bullish pennant, right? If we break down, obviously, if we lose something like, especially like the 230s and the 21 EMA, which is also around 230 at the moment on the daily, well, that's where things start getting more bearish. That's where, in my opinion, at the very least, we'll come down to around the mid teens, so like 215, 216, something like that, at the very least, in my opinion, minimum. Like, I'd be surprised if we don't honestly go there, but I'd expect us to come down to somewhere around there, maybe like 220. That's where the 200-day moving average is, close to 220. But I really do think it'll be not great, and I think we'll start a downtrend. I really do, but we'll see, of course. But again, that'll be the main thing, and it could be just a simple retest of this breakout right here, this blue line that we never have retested yet so far, right? We technically never gap filled this gap over here as well, right? We got pretty close to it, but obviously didn't actually gap fill. We still have a gap over here sitting at about 223, which is where roughly the 200-day moving averages on the daily. So keep that in mind as well, right? If I bring it up right here, you can take a look, right? The green line over here, pretty much right at the gap fill. So that can act as a support. We'll see. But those are the main things I'm looking at. And as of right now, again, it's a bit boring, but the main things to pay attention to, the main thing to wait for, and really just have patience, is going to be a breakout or down out of this bullish pennant, and to see what cracks first, 230 or 240. Otherwise, we are just going to be ping-ponging. Like I said, hopefully some of you remember when we had this initial rally, we started getting rejected here, I talked about how I expect some consolidation. I expect some sideways action. That's exactly what we've been getting, right? And now we're setting up for the next major move. Keep in mind also on top of this and everything else on the weekly, we also still have the squeeze indicator still squeezing. We have a fresh week that just started. Obviously things can change, but as of right now, yet another red circle. A lot of momentum building up on the weekly chart as well. If it goes down, it's going to be pretty aggressive, and it can potentially get as bad as something around the 150s once again, somewhere around the mid of 2024. That absolutely is a possibility. And if it goes up, I think the bull trend is finally back and enabled for Tesla, especially considering that will be the momentum that we need to break out of this overall downtrend resistance from all-time highs. And if this breaks, I would not want to be short. Let's just say that. But yeah, those are the main things I'm looking at, and the main thing I'm paying attention to, and the main thing I'm being patient with, and just, scalping here and there, just kind of for fun, honestly. And it's been working pretty well. I'm actually been pretty happy with the scalps, so can't complain too much. And the sold calls. But all in all, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. It does help a lot. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. We have a big week ahead of us. Might be a little bit more boring for another day or two, honestly, but I think the second half of this week should prove to be exciting. But all in all, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.